I need you to deeply understand something absolutely crucial before we proceed any further into this discussion. What I am about to share with you is not mere speculation or idle curiosity. It is not an abstract theory developed in a vacuum, and it most certainly is not some kind of far-fetched science fiction narrative designed to entertain. Just 3 days ago, NASA issued an internal, unprecedented directive that has never once been issued in the 70-year history of organized space exploration. They summarily suspended all deep space missions, every single one of them, without exception. And the profound underlying reason why they took this drastic action should genuinely terrify you and compel your absolute undivided attention. Before we begin this critical discussion regarding our future, I need you to do something essential for me. Please comment your city name below and tell me frankly, have you noticed anything unusual in the night sky lately? Anything at all that seemed out of place or unexplainable? NASA is monitoring this entire situation more closely than you can possibly imagine, and your personal observation might be far more critical to the global data set than you realize. My name is Dr. Michio Kaku, and what I'm about to share with you may fundamentally and permanently change the way you perceive humanity's true place in the entire universe. Let me take you back to September 2019. That is when the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, or ATLAS, first detected something undeniably entering our solar system from the interstellar void. We officially named it 3I Atlas. The I in the designation stands for interstellar, making it the third interstellar object we had ever successfully observed, following the high-profile arrivals of Oumuamua and Borisov. At the time, we naturally thought we were finally getting accustomed to these cosmic visitors. We assumed we understood the basic pattern, a rogue comet perhaps, or a stray asteroid ejected from some distant star system billions of years ago, drifting silently through the frozen void until it just happened to pass through our little corner of the galaxy. We were tragically wrong in that assumption. I've spent my entire professional career studying the fundamental forces that actively govern our universe. I have written extensively about parallel universes, about the fundamental fabric of space-time, and about the theoretical possibilities of civilizations millions of years more advanced than our own current state. But I always approach these profound topics with the comfortable intellectual distance of mathematics and theoretical physics. I never once expected to see the day when comforting theory would violently collapse into brutal, undeniable reality with such overwhelming force. The very first anomaly came just 3 weeks after 3I Atlas entered the heliosphere. The object was initially moving at approximately 26 kilometers per second relative to the Sun. Unusual, certainly, but not entirely unprecedented for an interstellar traveler. Its trajectory was observably hyperbolic, meaning it was supposed to swing around our Sun and then shoot directly back out into the endless depths of space, never to return again. However, it changed course. It moved not dramatically, not in a way that would instantly make global headlines, but with a subtle, precise deviation, a slight calculated adjustment in its trajectory that could have easily been explained away as random outgassing by a less attentive team. This refers to the release of frozen volatiles as an object heats up while approaching the Sun. Every single astronomer watching this object desperately wanted to believe that convenient, natural explanation. I wanted to believe it too. The problem, however, was that the detailed math simply did not work out. The observed deviation was too precise, too uniform, and too controlled. It was not the chaotic, irregular thrust you would naturally expect from random outgassing. It was a burn, a deliberate, controlled course correction. And that singular fact meant only one logical, chilling thing: propulsion. I vividly recall the emergency meeting at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, where we first discussed this revelation. The room was filled with some of the absolute brightest minds in planetary science. And I watched the color literally drain from their faces as we meticulously worked through the final calculations. Someone nervously made a joke about little green aliens to desperately break the suffocating tension, but nobody in that room laughed. We all instinctively knew the truth of what we were looking at, even if none of us wanted to risk saying it out loud to the world. For 6 harrowing months, we tracked 3I Atlas as it slowly moved through the inner solar system. NASA mobilized every available telescope, every observatory, and every piece of detection equipment we had in the world. The James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, Hubble, the Very Large Array, VLA, in New Mexico, and the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, ALMA, in Chile, were all intensely focused on this single object. We absolutely needed to understand what it was, precisely where it came from, and most importantly, what it wanted from us. The spectroscopic data came back first, and it was devastating to our current models. The object's elemental composition was unlike anything we had ever seen or recorded in nature. Not just unusual, but mathematically impossible according to our current understanding of material science. The surface appeared to be a complex crystalline metallic structure with a melting point that exceeded 15,000 degrees Celsius. No known natural process in the universe could possibly create such a material structure. This was not a natural rock. This was not an icy comet. This was something deliberately manufactured by an intelligence. I stood in my office that cold night looking up at the distant stars through my window, and I felt a profound emotion I hadn't felt since I was a small child. Fear. Pure, raw, existential fear. Because I realized in that decisive moment that we, humanity, in all our technological pride and self-proclaimed achievement, were fundamentally no longer the authors of our own story. We had suddenly become mere characters in someone else's much larger narrative, and we did not even know what essential role we were supposed to play in their drama. Then came the signal. It wasn't a standard radio transmission. It wasn't electromagnetic at all. It was something far more sophisticated, something we barely have the current theoretical framework to comprehend. Our gravitational wave detectors at LIGO picked it up first, a rhythmic, repeating distortion in space-time itself, emanating directly from 3I Atlas. The complex pattern was deeply mathematical, elegant, and unmistakably artificial. Prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences, and the fundamental constants of physics were expressed in a universal mathematical language. They were actively talking to us. I was quickly brought into another classified briefing at NASA headquarters, along with a small, hand-picked group of physicists, expert linguists, and intelligence officials. The atmosphere in that secure room was unlike anything I've ever experienced. There was no elation, no sense of historic discovery, just a heavy, suffocating dread. Embedded within that complex mathematical message was something else: data. Vast, immense amounts of data that our most powerful computers were still struggling to reliably decode. But we managed to get enough. We understood enough of the initial content to know that the message was not a greeting. It was a direct, unambiguous warning. Let me attempt to explain what they told us, though I am genuinely not sure if human language possesses the right words for it. According to the data stream, our galaxy, the Milky Way, is meticulously divided into zones, regions of space strategically designated by a greater galactic authority we never knew existed. These zones are not based on physical boundaries or terrestrial political territories. They are based on evolutionary development, on the level of consciousness, and on what they explicitly called cognitive emergence. Earth, along with several dozen other star systems in our immediate local region, exists within what they term a preservation zone. Think of it as a vast cosmic nature reserve or a carefully managed, restricted habitat. We are being actively observed, studied, protected, and most critically, isolated. The reason for this isolation is simple, logical, and profoundly horrifying. We're not ready. Not ready for what, you might ask? Not ready for contact with the broader galactic civilization. not ready for the vastly advanced technologies that would instantly become available to us, and not ready for the philosophical and profound existential implications of learning our true subordinate place in the cosmic hierarchy. According to the message, species that are contacted too early, before they have achieved what the message precisely called cognitive unity, tend to utterly self-destruct. Not eventually, but very rapidly, often within a single generation. The instantaneous introduction of advanced technology and a fully cosmic perspective to a species still tragically caught in tribal thinking, still rigidly divided by borders, irrational ideologies, and primitive resource competition, is apparently fatal. Every single day I think about this revelation constantly. The Fermi paradox, the question of why, in a universe so vast and so old, we have never detected any obvious sign of intelligent life, suddenly has a terrifyingly coherent answer. We are in a quarantine, a galactic quarantine. And 3i Atlas is merely a monitoring station checking in periodically on the inhabitants of this isolated zone, making absolutely sure we are still safely contained within our planetary environment. But here is the final shattering detail that keeps me profoundly awake at night. Something has recently changed in the status quo. 3i Atlas didn't just passively pass through our solar system, deliver its data, and move on. It stopped. 3 weeks ago, at a position approximately 1.2 astronomical units beyond Jupiter's orbit, 3i Atlas came to a complete, inexplicable halt relative to the Sun. It is simply sitting there now, completely inert, waiting, watching, and that is the exact moment NASA made its terrifying decision. All deep space missions were immediately suspended. The Artemis program to return humans to the moon was postponed indefinitely. The meticulously planned missions to Mars were canceled. The probes we were preparing to send to Europa and Enceladus to search for life in the subsurface oceans of those moons were shut down. Why? Because we received a second message, and this one was even more chillingly explicit. We have been issued what amounts to a cosmic restraining order. We are explicitly not to leave our immediate orbital space. We are explicitly not to establish any permanent presence beyond Earth. We are explicitly not to send any more signals of intent into deep space. Any violation of these precise terms, the message stated ominously, would result in corrective intervention. They did not specify what that meant in detail. They did not have to. I have spent the last few weeks in urgent consultation with government officials, military leaders, and fellow scientists trying to logically make sense of our options. And the brutal reality we keep coming back to is this: we essentially don't have any options at all. We are, technologically speaking, mere insects compared to whoever sent 3i Atlas. If they decided tomorrow that humanity had become too dangerous, too unstable, or too much of a threat to spread beyond this planet, they could sterilize Earth without ever physically setting foot here. A relativistic projectile traveling at 90% the speed of light would impact our planet with the force of 1 billion nuclear weapons. We would never even see it coming. Our entire civilization would be reduced to a thin, non-threatening layer of ash in the geological record, and the galaxy would continue on without us, never noticing we were gone. This is the frightening reality we are living in now. We are not the brave pioneers we thought we were. We are not the courageous explorers reaching out into the cosmic ocean. We are effectively specimens in a terrarium, being carefully managed by forces we cannot possibly comprehend and cannot resist. But there is one more element in the data, something that might be a tiny thread of hope or might be the cruelest irony of all. The message clearly indicated that the quarantine isn't permanent. Species can graduate from preservation zones, but only if they successfully achieve cognitive unity, only if they transcend their tribal origins and become, in some fundamental holistic way, a single consciousness. The message was explicitly clear that this is not a hive mind. Individuality is apparently essential to higher order cognition. However, it requires a species where every individual sincerely sees themselves as part of a larger, interconnected whole, where cooperation fundamentally overwhelms competition, and where the survival of the many becomes indistinguishable from the survival of the one. How long do we have to achieve this? The message didn't specify an exact deadline, but it did provide examples of other species who successfully made it through the test. The average time from technological emergence, the point where a species develops radio technology and nuclear weapons, to cognitive unity is approximately 300 years. Some species do it much faster. Tragically, many species never do it at all. We are currently about 130 years into our designated window. I look at the current state of our world today, the endless conflicts, the crippling divisions, the frustrating inability to cooperate even in the face of genuine existential threats like climate change and pandemic disease. And I deeply wonder if we are going to make it. I wonder if the beings who sent 3I Atlas are watching us right now, running their calculations and constantly updating their probability models for whether humanity will be one of the species that successfully evolves or one of the species that fatally destroys itself before it ever gets the chance to grow up. There is a term in evolutionary biology, the great filter. It's the concept that there must be some barrier, some extremely difficult, improbable step in the evolution of intelligent life that prevents every civilization from becoming a galaxy-spanning empire. Some scientists argued the great filter was behind us, the emergence of life or consciousness. Others argued it was ahead of us, some final test that most civilizations fail to pass. Now we know exactly which one it is. The great filter isn't technological. It is purely psychological and sociological. It is the critical transition from seeing ourselves as separate tribes competing for severely limited resources to finally seeing ourselves as one interconnected species with a common shared destiny. It's learning to think in timescales longer than simple election cycles and quarterly earnings reports. It's developing the wisdom and maturity to match our frightening power. And we are currently failing that test. I received an emotional call last night from a colleague at SETI. She was in tears. She told me she had spent her entire life searching for evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence, dreaming of the day when we would finally make contact, when we would finally know we weren't alone. And now that it has actually happened, now that we have received unambiguous proof that we are part of a galactic community, we have simultaneously discovered that we are not invited to join. We are the problematic neighbors nobody wants to talk to, the problem children who must stay confined in their room until we learn to behave ourselves. The profound irony is that we have been shouting into the cosmic void for decades, beaming our powerful radio signals into space, desperately hoping someone would hear us and respond. And they did hear us. They have been listening the entire time. They just consciously chose not to respond because they were patiently waiting to see if we would successfully grow up first. We didn't. NASA's drastic suspension of all deep space missions is being officially explained to the public as a simple budgetary issue, a necessary reallocation of resources. That is the official, carefully crafted story. And it is the story most people will accept and believe because the complex truth is simply too strange, too disturbing, and too fundamentally destructive to our collective self-image as a species. How do you tell 8 billion people that we are not ready for the stars? That we are being deliberately held back by our own profound psychological and social immaturity? That the universe has looked at humanity and decisively concluded we need more time in forced isolation before we are allowed to play with the other civilizations? But some of you already suspect something is wrong. Some of you have been watching the sky and noticing things that don't quite make sense to you. Lights that move in ways that defy conventional physics. Patterns in the stars that seem almost deliberate and planned. That is why I urgently asked you to comment your location at the beginning of this broadcast, because the monitoring has now dramatically increased. 3I Atlas is no longer alone. Over the past 2 weeks, our long-range detection systems have identified at least 17 more objects entering the solar system on trajectories consistent with intelligent, conscious control. They are currently positioning themselves in a loose sphere around our sun, approximately 2 astronomical units out, a clear perimeter, a defined boundary. They are making sure we stay put. I think about the brave astronauts on the International Space Station, ISS, right now, looking down at Earth, and I wonder what emotions they are feeling. They are the farthest humans from home, our most distant representatives, and yet they are barely 400 kilometers above the surface. In cosmic terms, they haven't gone anywhere at all. We are all trapped here together on this one small world with all our entrenched problems and all our magnificent potential, trying to figure out how to become something truly worthy of the stars. The question that truly haunts me isn't whether we will ever get to explore the galaxy. It is whether we deserve to, because maybe they are entirely right. Maybe a species that cannot even achieve peace and stable cooperation on one single planet, with one single atmosphere and one set of interconnected ecosystems, has absolutely no business spreading its chaos and conflict to other worlds. Maybe we would become a plague upon the galaxy, bringing our tribal violence and our profound short-sightedness to every untouched world we might reach. Or maybe we are profoundly capable of more. Maybe this enforced isolation is precisely what we need right now. A powerful pressure cooker that will force us to confront our own internal nature and choose consciously and deliberately to evolve beyond it. Maybe the next 170 years will be the most important, consequential period in all of human history. The period where we either achieve the cognitive unity that will finally unlock the galaxy for us, or tragically destroy ourselves in nuclear fire and climate catastrophe, becoming just another failed, discarded experiment in the cosmic laboratory. I do not know which path we will ultimately take. Nobody alive does. That is the terrifying ultimate beauty of free will. The outcome of this test is not predetermined. We get to choose what kind of species we finally become, but I do know this. They are watching right now at this very moment. Advanced intelligences with technology and perspective we can barely imagine are monitoring our every move, our every small decision, patiently waiting to see if we will pass the test or fail it miserably like so many other species before us. 3I Atlas forced NASA to suspend all deep space missions because we have been told, in no uncertain terms, that our expansion into space is definitively over until we prove we are fully ready for it. We're grounded, and we will remain grounded until we fundamentally learn to see ourselves not as Americans or Chinese or Europeans or Africans, but simply as humans, not as different religions or competing ideologies vying for dominance, but as one single species with one future, standing together at the ultimate threshold of either transcendence or self-extinction. The universe is patiently waiting to see what we choose. I have been thinking about my young grandchildren a lot lately. They are young, still happily in school, still innocently dreaming about the future with that unburdened optimism that children possess before the world inevitably teaches them to be cynical. What kind of world will they ultimately inherit? Will they grow up on a planet finally beginning to heal, finally learning to cooperate, and finally taking those first tentative, unified steps into a galactic community that warmly welcomes us? Or will they inherit the ashes of a once great civilization that had everything it needed to succeed and tragically squandered it on ancient hatreds and willful, arrogant ignorance? I do not have the final answer. None of us do. But I know the answer will be definitively determined by the collective choices we make in the next few years and the next few decades. Every decision matters now more than ever before. Every step toward unity or division, toward cooperation or competition, toward wisdom or short-sightedness is currently being weighed on a cosmic scale we are only just beginning to understand. And they are watching us. They have always been watching us, and they will continue watching until we finally prove we are ready to join them or tragically prove we never will be. So I will ask you again with utmost sincerity, have you noticed anything unusual in the sky? Because this is no longer just about mere scientific curiosity. This is about understanding that we are part of something vastly larger than our planet, something that has been unfolding for billions of years across trillions of stars. And we are now standing at a critical junction point in that entire cosmic story. Follow this channel as we continue the urgent process of decoding the universe's final warnings, because this is not over. This is only the true beginning of a monumental transformation that will either elevate us to the status of a star-faring species or confine us indefinitely to this one small world until we fade into geological history and the universe seamlessly moves on without any further notice of our failure. The question I can't stop asking myself, the question that keeps me awake every single night staring at the ceiling, is this. When the cosmic historians write the story of humanity thousands of years from now, will they write about us as the species that grew up, that learned wisdom, and that earned their well-deserved place among the stars? Or will we be a grim cautionary tale, a warning to other young civilizations about what happens when a species gains godlike technology without gaining commensurate godlike wisdom? What do you genuinely think? Do you believe humanity can successfully pass this ultimate test? Drop your thoughts below, because I truly want to know your perspective on our shared future. We are standing on the precipice, and the silence from the stars is no longer a mystery, it is a mirror. It reflects our own flaws, our own fears, and our own incredible potential. Whether we shatter that mirror or step through it into the unknown is entirely up to us. The watchers are waiting. The perimeter is set. The deep space missions are silent. Now the real work begins here on Earth.